Well, if I did actually say something, I don't have to get it right. This is what I need to do to be able to feel okay about that and then have that conversation. Because I know conversations can save lives. Hi everyone, this is Julie Gillespie, your host for the Conversations with Julie podcast, the show that's a safe place to come together to understand how conversations are what connects us. You will be seeing my introduction, where you get to know a little bit about me, about what I do and why I've come into doing this podcast in the first place. And we're going to do that by having Helen Palmer introduce me. Now, you can find out more about Helen Palmer in the show notes, but I also interview her on episode 3. So you'll really get to know all about who she is in that space. But I wanted to do it this way so you could understand who I am from the perspective of someone who's in the profession, who's someone who I would consider to be a listener of this podcast. To me, this podcast is about being human, compassionate leadership and mental health, where we come to understand how conversations are what connects us, and it enables us to be functional, compassionate humans. I'm a principal master instructor for mental health first aid, but I also come from the business world of being a director of operations and product development. Fun fact always that I like to drop in is that I'm also a cosmetic chemist. Like, there is a number of things that I've done over the years that have led me to this point. The most prominent part, and I guess the lens that I use in this environment, is that I come from lived expertise. So I've had mental ill health on and off for the past 30 years, and 4 major burnouts along the way. So I've traveled this journey very rough and hard. And it's through the conversations that I've had over the years, and in doing the mental health first aid training and the conversations I've had with business leaders, that this is a response to those conversations, putting this podcast together. Why I'm here, it's because I've sat so many times in so many awkward and uncomfortable conversations where someone doesn't want to say something wrong and they don't want to be offensive and they don't want to, they don't even know what the right thing to say is. I know, and because I've played with this and I've messed around with this and I've been, so many times of practicing this, I know it's just about having a conversation. I've taken out my emotions and the fears of, it's an awkward conversation, it's a tough conversation, it's going to be problematic, I'm going to get a reaction, and what if, blah, it becomes this really messy thing. But what if it's just a conversation? What's in it then? So this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. So the structure, so you get to know what to expect moving on in. Conversations happen micro to macro level. So the conversations we have with ourselves. So we'll be digging into how we have conversations with oneself, but also with friends and colleagues and peer-to-peer. And then we're going to be talking about what are the types of conversations organizations are allowing to happen and what tone are they setting? What's the cultural influence on conversations we're having? I've even got insights from industry leaders. How are industries setting the tone for conversations? How are they changing what we can do within a conversation? What's allowed? Like, there's this allowed aspect to it. So conversations can happen at all sorts of different levels within our lives, and I want to investigate them. I want to get curious with it. I want to poke and have a little bit of fun with what these conversations can do, because there's a lot of power in the connection that a conversation can create. So that's what to expect. You're going to learn a little bit more about me and all of those other aspects from the next section of this particular podcast with Helen Palmer. But if you do have questions, if you do want to know more about why I'm doing what I'm doing, or more about the mental health first aid, which comes up, in conversations fairly regularly, do connect in, do leave a comment, and send me an email. Get onto my website, have a look around. But first and foremost, start a conversation. Thank you. I hope you enjoy the rest of this podcast, and I look forward to having you as a long-term listener and viewer.
Today, I get to talk with Julie Gillespie about the new podcast series she's putting together. And my name's Helen Palmer. I'm going to appear in a later podcast as a guest, but today I get to be on this other side of the microphone asking you some questions. Welcome,
I'm
Julie.
excited.
Oh, great. So my first question is, who is Julie Gillespie and why is it important to talk about conversations?
Wow. Okay, loaded. So Julie Gillespie is, this is a 4-year product that I've been developing. So as much as Julie Gillespie human is sat here, there's more to this, I guess, because I want to be a credible, source of advocacy for people who have experienced mental illness, but also advocate in businesses and talk to business owners, business leaders, industry leaders, and that needs to have, I guess, this credible source. So Julie Gillespie nowadays is a mental wellbeing consultant, trainer, coach. That's even evolving over these past 12 months into mental wellbeing facilitator, trainer, coach. I seem to be facilitating more conversations than consulting, telling people what to do. As much as I love that, I prefer being in the middle of things and helping to guide people into a space where they come up with their own answer.
And when you say people in conversations, is that a one-to-one conversation or a group conversation?
One-to-one and group. So, and I turn up in all sorts of different spaces with that. So it might be the one-to-one where it feels nearly like a mentoring session or a guiding or, facilitating an idea of something. Groups or even industry. I've been poking around at some of the industry leaders to see what's this industry conversation that we're having. And so now it's, Julie Gillespie, who sits in mental well-being. I'm not a practitioner. I'm not a clinician. I have lived experience, which has kind of evolved into this lived expertise, through embodying, I guess, the frameworks and the research that I've done over the years to help myself to then be able to comfortably sit in advocacy of supporting others.
So you want to be part of the big conversations and the small conversations and stimulating conversations, not only being a part of responding in those conversations.
Yeah, and, to bring up important conversations, start ones that are being shied away from because it's not my business, or I'm a bit scared to kind of go there, or, what if something happens to me? What if someone yells at me? What if? I don't carry that burden with me. So I'm happy to say, well, hang on a second, I think this needs a conversation.
You've mentioned to me before that you're hearing from many people about the importance of quality conversations. What sorts of things are you hearing?
Everything from, and this is what stimulated me to do this, and this is a response to those conversations, is starting the podcast, where people are going, we're not allowed to have a conversation about mental health here. If I talk about mental health or I'm having a problem, I might lose my job, or I might not get that promotion, or I will be limited in some way. Industries where, we can point at many, many industries where to talk about mental health, you're seen as a problem. Mm-hmm. You're excluded, you're pushed aside, you're not employed again, or there's things that happen to you as a result. So, and these are conversations I'm in, whether it's construction, whether it's mining, whether it's transport, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's financial institutions, whether it's, office, environments, government or private owned, large or small. It's that same sense of, I don't feel safe saying that, so I'm just going to protect myself and not say anything. And it's like, well, how does that help you and how does that help the next person?
So there's two aspects to the conversations here. The conversations might be about mental health themselves, but also in having a different quality of conversation might actually be good for your mental health.
Yes. You can get movement through a conversation. And that movement can either be for yourself of moving through a situation, finding clarity, finding, this peace of mind, finding that this awareness that comes around, for yourself, but also the awareness that's created for others and for team, organisation, industry. there's this ripple effect, I think, that happens as a result. And you've seen this, in the work that you do, is that it just takes one person, and usually someone, if they've got credibility, authority, or a position of power, to say, hey, I'm struggling at the moment, I need some help, and this is what this looks like. The effect that has, the positive effect that has across so many different areas is powerful. And, my position is that I don't have fear of ramifications. I'm not going to lose my job. I'm self-employed. I could fire myself, but that would be silly. But I could lose an account, but that's okay. Obviously, it's not the right place for my voice to be, but it's also very telling, that's when more work has to happen.
It sounds like there's going to be the potential for lots of rich conversations with different people. Tell us a little bit about what's going to happen in this podcast series.
I'm excited because I learn by talking and learn by conversations and learn by pushing and poking and getting people a little uncomfortable to see what comes to the surface. And I get to do that in my work every day in doing the mental health first aid training, and because I do that in organisations as well. But the type of conversations that I want to have is about the individual. How do they experience conversations? How do they experience the overcoming discomfort to have a conversation? Through to teams. How important are difficult conversations for teams? How important is it to gain clarity for teams? And then business leaders. Right, what types of conversations are you having with your people around you? What are you embodying? What are you showing your people that it's okay to ask about or talk about or have conversations about? And then I've got a few industry leaders.
Exciting.
I know, I'm so excited because I've come across industry leaders that want more, are pushing for more. They don't necessarily know how that more is going to look yet, but they're wanting it, and they're starting the conversations despite not having the answer. And I love that because it means that there's openness for feedback, for conversation, for co-design, for creating a space that all people feel comfortable to not have the answer. Hi, it's Julie here. I just wanted to take a quick break in the middle of all of this and thank you for listening. And also to reach out and say, hey, I would love your support in this podcast, in helping me to grow it and helping me to get it into more listeners' ears and to see us as well. There's so much content in here and I'm looking forward to you being a part of all of this. So now back to the conversation.
Many times I think in conversations there's a notion of it being explanatory. I'm here to explain something. And what I'm hearing is you're looking for exploratory conversations. Let's explore.
Yeah, and because I don't have the answers. I'm not an expert. I don't have a qualification of professional conversationalist. I've got my Executive Masters of Business Administration, Bachelor of Commerce, got degrees and credentials and stuff. Putting all of that aside, none of that tells me how to help support others who need to resolve a situation. And, to be able to sit in that space with other people, to be able to explore what could be, that's fun, right? I know you love that as well, of sitting, being in the middle of stuff, being in the middle of the mess a little bit and figuring it out with people. And not needing to go into fixer mode.
And some of that figuring out too is not about I'm here to facilitate a process. It's I'm here with the fullness of who I am, standing in my truth, appreciating what might be the emotional context of what's going on.
Because, all conversations are emotion-based. They're our data points. They're the things that are telling us how it's going, how it's not going, where we have to change, where we have to move through things, what's safe, what's not safe. And we feel before we think. So, absolutely, to be able to sit in that and use that and to help others to sit in that as well, I think is going to be really important to create actual effective change.
This sounds like an interesting series. What does that actually look like?
I asked that question and it's like, I don't know. I actually have no idea.
Something happening regularly?
Yeah, so the looking like, I do have a schedule and I do have a fixed plan and to be honest with you, and I'm going to put this out there, is that this is the first time that I've had more than a 6-month plan for myself. And this is reflective of my mental health journey. So the podcast for me has given me, initially it was a 2-year plan. It's like, oh my God, there are so many people I want to talk to. What a great excuse to be able to sit and share space with these people and have conversations about things that we've either already spoken about or not. The 2-year then went to 4. I know.
Ambitious.
And really ambitious. And, there's other things that this is then promoted. So initially it's a once a month type of thing, because
yes.
it's pretty hectic work. It looks like a conversation, but we are in a studio where there is production, there's articles that we want to write around it, support material that we want to put to it. Different people that we're interviewing, I want to make sure that they've got time and opportunity to respond to it. I want to reflect on these conversations. I want to have time to not get it right here and come back and think about it and, talk about it again. So once a month. I think that's all I can do. I know.
Well, also, I think that puts it in an ecosystem of the nature of conversations. They aren't just a singular moment in time. They're something that we come to, something that we reflect on, something that goes at many different levels and layers, something that might actually be prompted by something we've read or something we've listened to. So you've got a richness there going on in an ecosystem around conversations.
Yeah, and there are so many things that, and it's the combination of my ecosystem with the other people that I'm in here with. But I also want to make sure that those that end up listening to the podcast have opportunity to speak into that as well. As much as I'm curious about talking to all of these people and I have this 4-year plan, there's still this sense of there needs to be this resonance with people who are picking this up and listening to it, and making sure that their curiosity is also answered. So, this gives that time for that. To do this once a week and produce something once a week, there's no opportunity for feedback. And conversations about feedback, isn't it? And conversations aren't singular in moment. We have lifetime, like we've got ongoing conversations.
What is your hope for this podcast?
There's a few folds to that. So there's this individual personal aspect to it. So the personal Julie behind all of this is I've got something to be hopeful about. I've got a plan. Like, this is an extraordinary thing for myself as well, is that I can see where I'm going to be and how active and purposeful I'm going to be for a longer period of time. So this has given me a framework for that. From the other aspect of Julie Gillespie and, the product in around mental well-being, is that these conversations that we have, and this is why we're recording, this is why people can see this as well, can see that, there's nothing smooth about this. There's nothing linear about what we do. And my hope is that people see that and recognize this to be true and use it as a data point for being able to add to their own collection of data points and go, well, if I did actually say something, I don't have to get it right. This is what I need to do to be able to feel okay about that, and then have that conversation. Because I know conversations can save lives. That's part of the mental health first aid training. Yeah. But I've also known there's been conversations that have saved my life. Just simple ones of, what are you up to? And the conversation that came from that. So, so the hope is personal, that I've got something fun to do and look forward to, and a schedule and a framework personally. But from the other aspect of, how I want to influence and advocate, the hope's there that someone learns that having a conversation, it can be hard, but it can also save a life.
We look forward to many of these conversations, Julie.
Thank you. Thanks very much. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to support the podcast, please leave a review or share it with someone you want to start a conversation with. Don't forget to subscribe or follow the podcast on your preferred platform. To catch all the latest from me, show notes, information, and resources, you can visit my website, which is julie.gillespie.direct. Thank you.